what people who are uninitiated into philosophy consider truth to be is something very different to what philosophers will consider truth to be. So this is where probably a lot of the divide and contestation is deriving from. Because people look at the world about them and they want truth they want people to tell them truth. I think that's what the variety of truth is that most people are looking for. They're not too interested whether it is true whether atoms exist or not, or whether it's true that we are actually conscious beings or not. Because believe it or not, there are some philosophers who consider even consciousness to be an illusion. So we've got all sorts out there, people. It's what the human mind does. It can think in a whole array of ways, and that's the beauty of consciousness, you see. So if there's any truth in this cosmos, in this world, then it is consciousness, because that is at the root of all of our thoughts and sensations and feelings and experiences. It's consciousness. Take consciousness away and we don't have any sentience in regards to lots of things we experience, do we? And we'll be little more than apes, or squirrels operating on programs derived out of evolution through millions of years, probably. Or it could just be a simulation, the program of a simulation. When you've got people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's no fool, lots of people go, oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I used to be of that frame of mind, but he's moving quite rapidly into the mystical. And if you watch his channel, Star Talk, then you'll see the different subject matter that he's broaching, and a lot of it is esoteric and mystical. And so he's much more open-minded now about things. But even he says that I'm still waiting for someone to prove to me that we're not in a simulation. That's a mainstream scientist for you there, people. That's a mainstream guru. And even he's saying it's not fucking real. So what do you want? That dude is a cosmologist. And, for many, many years, he's believed in that shit up there and all the scientific equations and everything like that. But now he's saying, well, it could even be a simulation, for all I fucking know. So, deception as opposed to truth, then, of course, that's more favourable. But I'm not discounting that level of truth that people are seeking, because that's too low level. I'm not even thinking on that level. I'm thinking vastly higher in the philosophical realms. I'm not thinking in the egoic realm. The vast majority of my videos, I don't even know if there's any really that are deeply seated in the ego. I don't believe in the ego. The ego is a liar from beginning to end. And so therefore we have to come outside of the ego if we're going to get any remote semblance of ever discovering some sort of semblance of a reality that doesn't pertain to the fiction of the ego. So, and this is what Jesus was speaking about. So I can't discount what he was alluding to. It's all the stuff that people don't get. That Jesus is the saviour and this. Look, it's not Jesus, it's not the man. It's not even the fucking words. Just take on board a few lines and look inside. That's it. It's decent philosophy, people. Meditate, look inside, and you will find, if you do that often enough, the kingdom of God, what he was speaking about. And to help people to do that, he said, don't be cruel, don't be deceptive, don't steal and don't murder and all this sort of stuff. And if you don't do any of those things, then you settle your heart and your mind, and you're not always living in fear of retribution. You see, it's simple. We don't have to get involved in too much mysticism. It's human psychology. The vast majority of the Bible is basic human psychology. But the paradox which the cosmos appears to be, there are spirits. Now, I find myself immersed on a daily basis well within the realms of the paradox. It's absolutely unavoidable. You cannot avoid the paradox if you are seeking out to define things ultimately. You know, I'm careful to avoid truth because, you know, people, oh, you say there's no truth. The truth is just a concept. And so we can look at it from like that, and I can blow truth out of the water by saying it's just a concept. What does truth mean? Look for what truth means in the dictionary. Do it now. Pause this video. Look for what truth is in the dictionary. See if you can determine anything that is absolutely concretely real. You won't be able to do it. You'll go from word to 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 word, and in the end you'll end up in the mire. And that's the nature of language. Spelling is casting magic, people. We're casting magic upon ourselves to delude ourselves. You will never know anything via language. And so when we watch people like Jordan Peterson struggle like fuck, and you see him getting older by the day with all the tension in his mind, then you look, Jordan Peterson's heading for a nervous breakdown. Now, he already suffered deep depression in his life. So he most certainly has the propensity to fall that way. And I don't know how he's managed to stave it off for so long, being so active and so busy. But as far as I can see, he's looking for a downfall because he's going to have a mental implosion. Because he seems to be of the opinion that there is truth and he can find it. But that is going to send him mad. Because he well knows that where he's going to be looking, or at least he should know, I've never heard him speak about the paradox, but he should know. The greatest of thinkers have always spoken about the paradox. Whenever you're looking for something, this cosmos is a shapeshifter. It moves its goalpost, people. Even in the quantum realm, it moves its goalpost. That's what the whole thing about the double slit experiment is, that scientists could never get their heads around it, still can't to this day, and most people just don't want to even acknowledge that experiment ever existed, because what it says is just too incredible. It says that our consciousness creates this physical matter, because when they look for the physical matter, it isn't there, and it's only because of consciousness, or the virtue of consciousness, that it appears to be there. And so, you know, it's like Max Planck said, the founder of quantum physics. He says the only thing that, you know, could be considered to be matter is, you know, a force of energy which appears, you know, to be holding things together. It's just energy, and you know, there's so much about how energy works that we just don't know. We don't know anything about energy, to be fair. You know, we don't even know what electricity is, people. We don't know what gravity is. You know, we can work with these things, but we don't know what they are. And so there's just so much that we don't know. So where's the truth in that? Scientists can embrace certain things because certain things are a certain way, but they don't know what they are definitively. And so that's the level of truth that I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about the Eastern philosophical non-existent truth, the Maya, the deeply even Western philosophical dismissal of truth, as in Descartes. You know, Descartes set out to discern what was true in his life, what was true in relation to his senses. And he discerned that there wasn't a single thing about his senses that he could depend upon. And so, look, if you want to know any about this stuff, people, then read my book. It's in the book. There's a lot of very important things which will hopefully answer many of your questions and take you into a different paradigm of consciousness, because there's just an enormous amount of stuff in that book which is exceedingly poignant. And for those of you that are reading that book, or maybe even have read that book, then for goodness sake, write a review about it. Send me an email about it, put some comments down about it, come and talk to me about it. Because if you can't do that, all it's saying is that that book, the information in that book, is vastly over and above your level of consciousness. Look, there's 56 books sold, and there is 4 written appraisals, whatever you call it, and there's 2 without. Hello, little one. I can see you're a little one. Where's Mama? Where's Mama? Yeah. So, write an appraisal. For goodness sakes, the book must have meant something to you. And, come and talk about it. It's just astounding that I can't get no level of committal out of any of you. Are you involved in such diabolical levels of slavery that your time is so exceedingly precious? Because if that's the case, then you might want to look at that, people. You might want to look at that, because before you know it, you'll be old and fucked, and you'll be bitter and twisted because you never actually got around to live a life. You just worked for the fucking man. You never had a life. You bought into the whole fucking wedding thing. You bought into the whole mortgage thing. You bought into the old career thing. And you look around, and okay, you might have a nice house and a reliable car and a few cushy holidays. But what have you got, really? What have you learned on your journey? Have you learned anything about the self? Have you ever had any time to yourself, really? Have you ever entered into a meditative practice? Have you ever been on any of these spiritual excursions? Psychedelics, entheogens, or, anything paranormal, supernatural? Have you lived? How many countries have you travelled on your own? Just hitchhiking around, or, bumming around, and planes, trains and automobiles, and just going wherever the wind blows? How many of you have done that? Well, how many of you have just clung to your security all your lives through your self-induced terror? And so it's these people that have this self-induced terror, coupled with the globally hypnotized terror. You're all under hypnosis, people, from the cradle to the grave. And that's one of the things that Brett Weinstein was positing to Russell Brand last night in their conversation. That, the vast majority of people are hypnotized from a very young age into these doctrines. And that's it. Once the program's been fucking installed, once the mold's been cast, then it's exceedingly difficult to break out of that. I was never programmed. I wasn't in any of these indoctrination institutions long enough for me to be programmed. I was an unruly kid. I was an abandoned kid, effectively. Mother took her life when I was 4, and then father put 4 young babies into care whilst he got his life together, bought a new home and remarried, so he had someone to look after us again. But during that time, I was passed around from children's home to children's home, school to school to school, and so I never had the level of programming. And so, that's just how it was for me. And, I'm grateful for my mother vacating this life, because she enabled me to see this earth experience with a great deal of clarity. And doubtless it was an agreement that I had and she had, with this reincarnation thing. Yeah, sure, she'll come back down to earth, for a short sojourn. She'll have 4 children, then she'll fuck off. No strings attached, no morals, you know, no guilt, just done one. And I can't see that her demise was any benefit to the three siblings that I've got. They seem to have had diverse or adverse effects. They don't seem to have gotten anything positive out of it. They're all fucked. They're all fucked in some mental delusional way. They're all delusional, and they're in their own egoic created hellhole, and it's just shocking. You can't talk to them about anything remotely metaphysical or spiritual. They just haven't got that wherewithal. Why have I got it? I mean, we all went through the same sort of, childhood, broken home and all that sort of thing. Why was I the only one? To so-called see the light and become enlightened. And by the way, look, enlightenment, all that means is that you know what you are, or you know what you're not. You know you're not the human being. The human being isn't the be-all and end-all of what you are, and the ego isn't what you are. They're fiction. And so it probably even is that our consciousness even isn't what we are. We don't know, but what we do know when we become so-called enlightened, that we have found the seat of something which we can't go mentally or physically beyond, and that's that of awareness, the epicenter of consciousness. And so how many people actually have experienced that, felt it, lived it? Because those that have, of course, see the world in a very, very different way. And that's where I'm speaking from, people. And so you need to bear these things in mind, because the ego is going to be telling you all the things that it's been programmed with. And it's never ever going to rationally and reasonably want to look at those. It's not interested in looking at anything else. It's happy in its own dogma. And because the ego is the program to enable us to have a fictitious human existence, then it's going to fight tooth and nail to let go of its autonomy. Now, when we go through the dark night of the soul, this is what happens. We have this battle. The battle comes about with spirit when spirit rises. When the ego implodes, then spirit is apparent. It's always been there in some of us. At least I knew the spirit was always there from a very, very young age. I never felt alone. I was never lonely. There was always something that enabled me to travel around the world with the greatest of confidence, knowing that I was protected. I was always going to be protected, come what may. And I encountered some horrific things, but come out of all those completely unscathed and better for it. So they were all planned for my spiritual development. So the question is then, people, how versed are you in any of those topics that I've been speaking about? Because if you haven't studied philosophy, psychology, spirituality and religion objectively, questioningly, for a long, long time, with an open and free mind, if you haven't done that, then you can't really enter into a conversation with me, can you? You can't enter into an argument. Because if you'd had the experiences that I had, then you wouldn't have anything to say, basically, except being in agreement, because you would have formed similar conclusions. Just like many philosophers and spiritual people have. People that just have random spiritual experiences. They can lend themselves to becoming Christians or Muslims, depending on what creed they are. But real thinking people would lend themselves to being spiritual and not engaging in a dogma. And so that's where I am. I've had numerous spiritual experiences, all different sorts of crazy conscious experiences, but I'm so far from being religious because I just see so many flaws in it. It's not an intelligent, rational thinking person's prerogative to immerse themselves in that shit. And that's why, you know, I've got the deepest of I'm going to say, I'm going to think carefully about this word, skepticism in relation to Russell Brand, because he is a finely tuned thinking human being, but he's also an emotionally distraught one. And so through all his life he's built himself a little empire. He's got 3 beautiful kids and a doting wife, and he's got everything a human being could possibly want, an enormous amount of following, which was very important to him from the get-go. And yet he still needs something else to believe in. He still needs something else to fill that emptiness within him. And so it doesn't matter how intelligent we are. If you have a hole in your soul, then you're going to be looking for something to fill that. And I don't know how these holes in souls come about. I don't know why I never had a hole in my soul. I didn't ever need to clutch to anything. I've always been fiercely independent and open-minded in questioning. And so I look at Brand and I go, oh look, there's most certainly a deficit in your logic. In actual fact, he's not using any logic. He's overridden his logic. That's what you have to do with faith. That's what faith's about. And so when he speaks about his newfound faith now, or his dedication to his faith, well, I mean, he's thrown out his intellect in that realm. There is no intellect in the realm of Christianity. And I haven't heard him say that he knows God yet. I haven't heard him say that he knows Jesus. I haven't heard him say that, well, it's not actually Jesus the man, it's the essence, it's the Christos, it's that thing that you feel inside. I haven't heard him say that. But what he did say the other night in the conversation was that something has changed since his baptism. Something's changed, and but like, you know, what has changed? It seems to me it's little more than like a teenage girl having an infatuation with a pop star or something. He's all excited about this new love, but I can't see it lasting. I can't see it lasting because unless he really truly finds his freedom in the abyss, then he'll always be wanting. Because the notion of Christ is just a notion. And it leads to a calm state of consciousness if you do not judge, if you do not do, you know, all these things which contravene the 10 Commandments and that. Well, that's just basic human psychology. We all live better, comfortable lives if we don't do any of that. But when you still the mind, like he has learned to do in Eastern mysticism, for years he's been meditating, he's been into all that stuff. Well, now he's defected from that because he obviously never found that replacement for the heroin cuddle. He's still looking for the replacement for the heroin cuddle. Interesting, huh?